Good evening and welcome to the All Talk Paranormal Show brought to you by Keep On Chatting. Oh, that's not working. Okay. This evening we have got the fantastic Brandon Alvis. I will bring him on because you haven't come to watch me, you've come to watch him. Hello.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. It's much appreciated. I've been looking forward to this because we've had this arranged for quite a little while, and we're trying to fit it in schedule-wise and everything else. So I know you're very busy, and obviously our timing as well is obviously. What are we? 5 hours? Are we 5 hours difference?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's difficult to try and work out all the timings and everything. But yeah, I do appreciate you coming on. I just want to... All right, there we go. Right, just making sure sound and everything was okay then for a second. I didn't know if I'd get a bit of feedback, so I do apologise. So anybody that does... Like, there's going to be anybody watching that doesn't know who you are. But anyone who doesn't, can you give us a little bit of... a bit of a brief about yourself for anyone that doesn't know who you are, which I doubt there isn't anyone, but George Shoplin's just popped on. This badass looks so familiar. The smartest man in the paranormal. How about
that? Oh no.
That's what he's just put up. No pressure.
Very nice. George is the nicest man in the paranormal, that's for sure. That's very nice compliment, George. I appreciate that. But my name is Brandon Alvis. I am the founder of the American Paranormal Research Association. I founded the organization in 2006 to solely investigate historical locations throughout the United States from a scientific principle. And starting that organization and working with some of the best and brightest scientists in the world, one man, Dr. Harry Kohler, the only person in history to receive 2 PhDs simultaneously in any discipline, and engineers, medical doctors, and a panel that I put together that helped me remain grounded in scientific principle, actually launched me to work with A&E's Ghost Hunters and being the paranormal technician of that reincarnation of the show. And that's what I've been doing for about 16 years now, is investigating the paranormal from a scientific perspective and trying to find out, is there a possible existence of a life after death? And it's something I take very personally and something that's near and dear to my heart, that's for sure.
Because for personal reasons, this is why you got into this in the first place, wasn't it? Because I have read about you. Haven't read a great deal about you, but I have read about you. I don't like to really research people because when I talk to them, I want to talk to you. I want to get to know you and know all about you, not just read something. I'd rather talk to the person and get to know you properly that way. And I did read, obviously, that of how you got into the paranormal. And like, so you do come from it from more of a skeptic kind of view because you are trying to research this. You really are trying to find something. Otherwise, if you weren't open, you wouldn't be doing it in the first place. So do you design your own equipment or anything like that? Obviously, you come from a scientific point of view. So what is your point of view, if you don't mind me asking?
I do not design equipment. I think that equipment designed specifically for paranormal research produces a lot of false positives and really puts us in a bad situation when it comes to being taken seriously by the scientific community and the public. Not that you can't use it for entertainment purposes or having fun or experimental purposes, which I guess it is all experimental. There's really no definitive way to do this in a right or wrong way. There's no experts in the field in any way, shape, or form. But I do not design equipment. What I do is adapt equipment from other technical industries that can help me understand what's natural and what's not. But I can utilize this equipment, take that to a third party, an expert that utilizes that equipment, and those people can tell me if it's a natural occurrence or something they can't explain. And that starts to lead us on the path of the paranormal side of things, the supernatural side of things. So for me, it's all about the scientific aspect of going out there, trying to collect empirical evidence and factual data, providing that empirical evidence and factual data to a third party, and that third party scrutiny to tell me if it is a natural occurrence or not. And when we're left with something we can't explain, we can't say it's a ghost per se, but we can say it's something that we don't have an idea of what it is. And then we have to go out and try to replicate those results. And that's something I've been doing actively in the field since 2006. And I've investigated well over 200 locations, and maybe a handful I've collected data that can be explained by these third parties. But that's what keeps me going. And that's what really drives me to try to make the field a better place, try and provide a protocol, ethics, and a standard that hopefully we can step out of the shadow of pseudoscience one day.
See, I find it really interesting because this is the first time I've really spoken to anyone like yourself with the scientific point of view and everything, and adapting equipment that isn't specifically for the paranormal. I find that really interesting, because the only things I've ever really come across have been equipment that's specifically been made for it. I think we've used a couple of times different things that haven't specifically been made for it, but for you to actually go out and do that and actually have it adapted, I think it's just really interesting. I think it's amazing. And like you said, you've caught some, but also the fact that you have got that part of you, the scientific side, the skeptical side, is fantastic, because you not just go out there to debunk stuff, you want to find something, otherwise you won't be doing it in the first place.
Exactly.
Can someone give me a comment and let me know you can hear? Okay, sorry, I got someone. Sorry, I do apologize. Someone just commented saying that having a problem with the sound, but I think it might be their end because nobody else has commented. Yeah, I think it's just that one person. Sorry, I do apologize. But yeah, so tell me more about the scientific side of things, and if you don't mind. George has just said, I just got to put this up and then I'll let you speak. He's just said, last compliment, there are so many. When Brandon speaks, I feel I'm sitting in a classroom listening to a teacher. Brandon keeps what comes naturally, being really good at paranormal adventures research. So there you go.
George. That's nice, man. I
the one and only Mr. Shoplin. I love George. Don't tell my husband. So yes, so sorry, I do apologize. So when you say the scientific side, can you explain that a little bit more for us, please?
Sure.
If you don't mind.
Absolutely. Scientific principle is going out there, and I mean, if we think about it, let me backtrack a little bit and talk about some of the most brilliant scientific minds that ever existed. Nikola Tesla, you have Isaac Newton, people like Albert Einstein as well. They were actually deeply spiritual people in a lot of ways. So they really did believe in the unexplained and the possibility of life after death. I think some of them probably did believe in life after death, not the possibility. Yeah. So I've been very lucky since 2009 to work with Dr. Harry Clore. Like I mentioned earlier, he's the only person in history to receive 2 PhDs simultaneously in any discipline, and he received those in physics and chemistry. And I'm not a scientist by any means. I have never been in a lab. I've never conducted experiments. I'm definitely not a rocket scientist like Dr. Clore himself. But having him part of my organization and part of my research, a big colleague of mine, a mentor, really set that in motion for me, the scientific principle about going out and trying to find correlations and patterns, trying to find the baseline natural explanation for what we believe to be phenomena, categorizing that, documenting that, and then collecting data outside of that. And once we find something we can explain, we have to scrutinize that even more. And once we do not have an explanation, we have to try and replicate that data. And that's something we're trying to do. And we've done successfully in a few locations, which is very, very exciting. And him and I ended up conducting more research here in 2021, which is awesome and fascinating. But it's all about collecting empirical evidence and factual data. And that's something we don't see a lot in this field, unfortunately. There's a lot of sensationalism. There's a lot of people that base their investigations off of what they see on television, because what you're seeing on television a lot of the time is a product, right? It is a product created for entertainment purposes. And those entertainment purposes lead to a lot of bad research, unfortunately. And a lot of times when people present something they believe to be unexplainable, 9 out of 10, it's usually something that can be very easily explained. So that's something I want to stick to. I want to have that standard and that protocol
Yeah.
and that methodology where we are utilizing these other devices from technical industries, consulting a third party that understands how these devices work, that are collecting factual data, analyzing that data, and making conclusions based off that data. And then if it's something we can explain, trying to replicate that data. And that's very important. And that's something we're doing. And that's something we've done very well with the EMCCD camera, the photon camera that we utilize in season 2 of Ghost Hunters, and what I'm seeing called the paranormal photon theory. And I'm actually, to this day, trying to replicate and find data to support what we collected in 3 different locations on Ghost Hunters, in Haines, Alaska, Arizona, and Fort Stanton, New Mexico. So we had some amazing data collected there that is from a very sensitive scientific piece of equipment, and I've yet to replicate it, which is a good thing. But I'm just sticking down that path and working with those people, and hopefully we can push the field forward.
See, that's, like I say, I've never spoken to any. I see what George means now, because I'm sat here listening to you talk, and I can just listen to you talk. Supposed to be conducting an interview here, but no, I can see what he means. You can literally, because you've got so much knowledge and you've got so much information to share. It's really interesting actually listening, just listening to you basically. Do you do lectures or anything like that?
I have, yeah. Since 2008, I started doing lectures. I've done them at a few colleges throughout the country. I've done them at various locations. There was a time where I was raising money for various historical societies and museums across the country, because as we know, it's such a tough time for historical properties and museums to gain revenue in some way. And so that's something I started doing in 2008. And I would dedicate all my time, and all proceeds from those lectures and investigations would benefit the historical restoration of those properties. And it's something I'm hoping to get back into after Mustafa Gadalari and I release our book here in 2021, which will be released through Llewellyn Worldwide, one of my favorite publishers, by the way. I grew up reading Llewellyn books. I think that once we get the book out, we'll probably do a series of lectures and maybe even some seminars associated with the book. So that would be pretty fun.
So can you tell us a bit more about the book itself, and how it came together, and how you decided to do it in the first place, and a little bit more information about the book so people know what they're looking for and they can...
Sure. Yeah, one thing, I can't give too much information, unfortunately. The publisher hasn't given us the full green light yet to talk about the exact details of the book, but I can talk a bit about it. So
can you have an outline then, so you don't get into trouble?
Exactly. So since 2006, like I said, I've been conducting this research, and I've been very fortunate to work with some amazing professionals from technical industries. And so both going to kind of put together all of that research since 2006 and really talk about the protocol, ethics, and standards that have worked for us in our research. And then meeting Mustafa Gadalari on Ghost Hunters and working with him very closely for the 2 seasons, him and I just clicked. We have very similar mindsets, very similar ways of conducting ourselves. So and I got together, and we took years and years and years of research and are compiling that together to really show what we believe is the right way to conduct research, not only to benefit the field and push the field forward, but to show the actual data and the evidence we've collected over those years to say, hey, look, this is what's working. This is what's being recognized by third parties. Hopefully it'll open a few eyes, and hopefully people will listen, open their minds, and hopefully realize that science isn't the big bad wolf that a lot of people think it is. And it's something that actually aids our research and helps us, go forward.
What is the book called? So anybody, and when's it coming out? Oh, you can't even see what the book's called.
I can't say what it's called yet, but it'll be in 2021. I'm not exactly sure on the exact date yet. We'll probably be announcing that here in the next couple of months, which is very exciting. But it'll be in 2021. I can't say exactly when. As soon as we have the date, as soon as we're given the green light to talk about it, we will definitely have it all over social media and do some press releases as well.
Cool. And will you set up a page for all that and so on, so we can find it and we can search it, we know where to buy it from and all the rest of it? Oh, it must be horrible not being able to know all the information but you can't actually share it because you're not allowed.
Oh yeah, it's tough. It's tough, especially because there's one very big aspect of the book that we can't talk about that's going to, I think, change the field in a way. I think it's a really, it's a breath of fresh air. It's something we haven't seen. It's never really been conducted in the field. And I think it's something that, again, I've been very lucky and fortunate to work with these scientists and medical doctors, engineers that have really helped me remain grounded in scientific principle. And there was one big aspect lacking in this field. And I think we put it together in this book. And I think that people will really like it.
That's amazing. I don't really read that much, but I want to read it now. Just from you just describing that. We've got a question from Haunted Scouse. Hi, I know his real name now, it's Chris. Has becoming an experienced investigator made you more a believer, or are you still the same skeptic?
I'm still skeptical. I would say I'm a natural skeptic is the term I would use. Because, there's a lot of times that people call themselves a skeptic, that they're not really a skeptic. They're technically a non-believer, right? There's someone that goes into a situation with a bias and they are looking to disprove, right? That's not a skeptic. A skeptic is someone that wants to find evidence or data that something exists, not to find data or evidence that it doesn't exist. So I call myself a natural skeptic. There have been things I've experienced I can't explain, but a personal experience is one thing. Collecting data is another. And there's been, some amazing pieces of data we've collected over the years that is held up. We've still yet to find a natural explanation, and that's very exciting. So that pushes my investigations forward. Again, going into an investigation in a biased sense is not going to work well for you. It's going to taint your conclusion. It's going to completely overshadow your investigation. So going in from an unbiased point of view is the best way to investigate a case.
So out of interest for anyone out there that's just getting into the field, because we had someone the other day that they've, I don't know if they're on tonight, but they'll probably watch this tomorrow. They were asking, because they're very new to the field, and they were asking questions. What would your advice, asking what would your advice be to somebody that's just coming into the field? Firstly, like you already said, the shows are entertainment. So you've stated that already. So what advice would you give someone that is new and just starting out?
I would say read as many pieces of literature as you can get your hands on, from all aspects of paranormal research, psychic to scientific to metaphysical, whatever it may be. Just read as much as you can, gain as much knowledge as you can, figure out what your intentions are. Why are you getting involved in the field? Is it personal curiosity? Is it what I refer to as paratourism? Is it just for fun? Or are you looking to try and advance the field? And once you have that down, you have to set your ethics, your protocol, and your standard. And once you have all that together, that's when I think you actively go out and investigate in the field. Once you have that knowledge base, once you know exactly what your plan is, I think it's going to be a lot easier to go about starting your research and going out there and trying to collect evidence or data in the field.
Okay, we've got some, I just think that's an important question to ask, because everybody's got a different take on things, and everyone gives different advice. I like what you've just said there. Sorry, thinking out loud then. David, can you tell us what sparked your interest in the paranormal?
In 1995, I lost my oldest brother to cancer. And in 2004, I lost another brother to suicide. So that kind of sent me on my journey into the paranormal. It was never about having an experience per se. It was more about having to grow up very quickly at a young age and realize that death is one thing that we all have to deal with. Death is one thing that's actually the ultimate unifier. It's one thing that should actually unite humanity, the fact that we all are going to come to that time. And I instantly, just being the thinker I am, being the person that thinks a lot and contemplates, I started thinking about the possibility of life after death. And I've always been a firm believer that energy is neither created nor destroyed. Our body is completely made up of energy, where our brains are firing off neurons all the time. Where does that energy go when we die? Does it retain consciousness? And that's my big question. And that's something that I am actively pursuing to this day.
So you mentioned consciousness, and that's something that we haven't covered on here before. It's something I want to cover at some point, but it's not something we have, because everyone's got their own take on that too. Where do you stand?
I think that we have to look at this field from the point of view, if the theory is correct that these are entities, ghosts, spirits, whatever you want to call them, there's so many different terms, that they are people that somehow have retained consciousness after death. I know there's different types of hauntings. That's something that may be or may not be mentioned in the book. Just a little hint there. But we have to look at the fact that these are people from that theory. That's something we have to actively pursue and actively investigate. And once we open up and think about the humanity and humanizing the field, I think the respect level goes a lot further. Humanizing the field goes a lot further. Instead of going around everywhere assuming it's a demon and there's some negative connotation associated with it, it's dangerous. I think that once we open up the human aspect and the respect level and understanding the ethics, understanding the cultural aspects of different entities or spirits, everywhere you go, these were people. They lived a life. They had a very specific cultural aspect to their life. I think once we understand that and we utilize that in the field, I think we get a lot more results.
Yeah, well, I think that's really important. Like you've just said, that it's something that we say time and time again when we conduct any of the interviews, any of the shows that are on this network, is respect. And that is a huge thing. If you haven't got respect, personally, if you haven't got respect, then you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. That's just my personal feeling about it. If anybody agrees, disagrees, that's fine. We've all got our own opinions. But I think that is something so important, is having respect for where the location you're going to, respect for the people you're working with, and respect for who or who may not be there as well, in spirit form or energy form, whichever way you want to put it. Scrolling down too quick, all these questions are going out. If I don't ask them as they come up, I will lose them. Anyone said, what kind of experiments do you like to do to prove or disprove paranormal activity?
Well, when it comes to disproving, one thing that we've done a lot is actually going out there and trying to find natural infrasound, which natural infrasound is something that can mess with a person's temporal lobe activity and really make them feel like they're having ghostly experiences or phenomena. And that's something that we've conducted all throughout the country. And we've found that there is natural infrasound in various buildings that do make people feel like they're having paranormal experiences. There's even been locations. So for instance, in season 1 of A&E's Ghost Hunters, we went to the Mineral Springs Hotel. You had a
location.
Right.
I remember
and that place had not only this very conductive water, but had natural infrasound and high EMF throughout the entire building. The Old Springs Hotel, excuse me, not Mineral Springs, so Old Springs Hotel. And because of this high level of infrasound, this high level of EMF and this very conductive water, it was projecting all of this energy into people's temporal lobe and really making them feel like they had supernatural experiences. And that's really a way for us to say, hey, look, it's a very natural phenomena. It definitely will make someone feel like they're having a supernatural experience, but it's explainable. Doesn't really mean that there aren't people having experiences, but there's that natural explanation, right? We have to talk about that first and foremost. Now, when it comes to experiments to prove or find data that we can't explain, I think the EMCCD camera was a perfect example of that. I again spoke to my consultants. I asked them, I said, if ghosts are real, and from your perspective, from you being a scientist, how would they manifest if they were real? And the theory was thrown out at me that they were photons and photon events. So I was lucky to acquire a camera. It's an EMCCD camera. It's a camera designed and used by the digital imaging scientific community to record single photon events. So the idea was to take this camera into a location where very credible eyewitnesses claim to have seen an apparition. So I put the camera down that hallway and we collected some of the most amazing footage I've ever collected in 16 years. Not only is it visually very strange, but they are photon events that are working in conjunction with each other to create one image that looks very humanoid, looks like a person. And that's something we have yet to explain. and something I'm trying to replicate to this day. And something I've dubbed as the paranormal photon theory, and it's something I'm hoping to keep and continuing to investigate for years to come, and hopefully it gives us answers.
That is amazing. That must have been, wow, that must have been an amazing thing to capture into not being able to replicate it as well.
Yeah, I tried to replicate that multiple times. Yeah, it's
you've
very
tried. Yeah, I should imagine you've probably gone back to the same location and you've tried to replicate it on many occasions, and obviously it's can't be one of those usual. It's parried earlier. It's this, that, or the other, because you've not been able to replicate it. So, Leanne says, does Brandon think energy of a person can add in changing the environment of investigation, make it not so active, or vice versa?
Well, you know, it's an interesting question, because we've noticed, again, with these photon events that we're starting to see, that not only that, we're seeing significant pressure changes in barometric pressure. And that's something that we didn't notice until I think the third or fourth time we utilized the camera, because, you know, we're getting these photon events, we're seeing things we can't explain. So my next experiment and next theory was, is the environment changing around these photon events that are taking place? So I set a data logger in front of the camera, and we started to see there would be pressure changes, and seconds to minutes later, all of a sudden, these photon events start to show up. So I definitely think there is something to the environmental conditions and changes in the environment, specifically with pressure, and sometimes temperature as well. I've noticed that, but there's definitely a correlation and pattern there, and it's something I think that we have to look into further. But I've noticed that anytime there's a change in the environment, specifically pressure, something's going to happen. What that is, we're not sure. How that happens, we're not sure, but we're hopefully, you know, utilizing this camera and testing the environmental conditions, actually getting an insight into the mechanics of a possible manifestation.
When you said about pressure and everything, what about temperature changes? What are your thoughts on those, just out of interest for me?
We have seen a correlation with temperature and pressure changing at times, which I think sometimes naturally that occurs, obviously, but we have seen that there'll be an increase, then a quick decrease, which is strange. I mean, it happens really quick, and it's pretty significant. I think 5 degrees around there, 6 degrees, and then that'll take place, and then all of a sudden the pressure changes will take place, and then we end up getting some kind of either a visual phenomena or audible phenomena, and it's all time stamped, it's all correlated, it's all through time code, and we're starting to see that pattern. So it's, again, something we have to try and replicate, something we have to look into further, but it's all about the environmental conditions, and that's a big part of research, or should be a big part of paranormal research, is knowing what's natural in the environment, what's not natural, and starting to recognize the patterns. And if you start to see a change or a decrease or an increase and something happens, that's science, and that's really what's going to help us, you know, and benefit the field.
I could literally just sit and listen to you, but I better continue asking questions. It's not a question, but Wes just wants to say hey from him and his family in New Jersey. In Jersey.
Hey, Wes. How's it going in Jersey, man?
Haunted Scouts, we do it for fun, but we investigate the places we heard about growing up. So we're trying to add to the myths or dispel them further. Helps to know a place well helps to know a place well so relevant questions can be asked. Bringing relevant responses. Very important to know the history of a place. Do you agree on that? Is that something you do? You do the history search in?
Absolutely. I know that there's, you know, different types of investigation styles. There's mediums out there. There's people that have psychic ability that don't like to do that, and that makes sense. But from my point of research, yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, I mean, it wouldn't be a good idea to know the history going into a situation like that. I've worked with mediums. Yeah, exactly. I've worked with a lot of mediums, different types of mediums and psychics throughout the years. But for me, it's crucial to know the history. You should know everything about not only the history of the location, the blueprints of the building, everything. You should know it all. And that really helps your investigation, not only from the technical standpoint, but it helps you have an understanding of what may or may not be there. So having that information, going in, testing the environmental conditions, and basing your investigation around trying to find natural phenomena versus something you can't explain, I think it's very much crucial to have information historically prior to the investigation from the technical standpoint, that is.
Okay, thank you. Wes is asking, I did touch on this. Obviously, you've already explained about scientific equipment and you adapt equipment and so on. But he's asking what kind of equipment would you recommend for beginners? I told you there were going to be questions about beginners.
Absolutely. You know, I think a very simple digital audio recorder is something that's very easy to use and something that can really give you a lot of information and data if you use it properly. Also, if you're looking to test EMF in electromagnetic fields, you can use a simple compass for that purpose. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You can utilize the compass that if you come to a point where there is EMF, either natural or man-made, that compass will continue to spin and it actually will not find your cardinal direction. So that's another piece of equipment that you can use. So I would definitely say a digital audio recorder and a compass is a really great way to start out and understanding how to utilize those two pieces of equipment and then go in from there.
Do you use different recorders? Because I think we've got about, I don't know how many. My husband always corrects me on this because I always get it wrong. I think we've got 5 or 6 different types of recorders because obviously the different frequencies. If you got a certain recorder that is your go-to one that you use, or specifically certain ones you use, or ones that you wouldn't, that you could advise on at all?
You know, I use all kinds of different audio devices. You know, I was an audio engineer for many years. And to me, it's all about a device that has the highest bit rate of recording. And what that does, the highest bit rate gives you the most information in that recording possible. And what that does is help you take that into a spectrum analysis. And that spectrum analysis can break it down frequency by frequency. And it can show you if it's a cell phone frequency, a stray radio frequency, if it's a man-made frequency, or if it's something that sounds like human speech that's not showing up in the human vocal range. So the highest bit rate in a recording device possible gives you the most information that can be looked at and scrutinized. So that's something I would recommend. But I love the ambisonic microphones that Zoom makes, the 360-degree audio that they have. I would also recommend using the binaural microphones, which actually mimics human hearing. And why we use that and utilize it is going to a location where people claim to hear audible voices. We want to not only try and replicate the human hearing, but it also gives us a sense of superhuman hearing. So it gives us just that slight bit more of an edge. But it's always about the highest bit rate possible, the most information in those recordings, and that'll really help you when it comes to a spectrum analysis.
And we're on that subject of audio and so on. What are your thoughts on these apps that people tend to use now? Obviously, the best person probably to ask this question to. What do you think about these apps and things that people use now? Do you think they're, obviously I'm not asking you to tell me if you think they're credible or not, because I don't want to get you into trouble with anybody that that creates them or so on. But what are your thoughts on them? If you use them or?
I've used various different ones. That's one thing. All my opinions I've based off of actually utilizing these devices. I don't just go onto YouTube and Google it, or Google it and go on YouTube and look at other people using it. I try and test all these in the field. I love it. You know, I'm a ghost geek in that regard. I like to get out there and utilize as much technology as possible. But I think that those apps are for entertainment purposes only. I think that a lot of the devices made for ghost hunting or paranormal investigation are for entertainment purposes only. Doesn't mean things can't happen that are strange. They can, but if you were to take a piece of evidence, or what you would think to be a piece of evidence, from an app to, say, an engineer or a scientist, there's no data behind it. It's just an experience. It's just something that you had happen. It's not data. It doesn't give any information whatsoever. Doesn't mean it's not fun to use on investigations or something people should or shouldn't use. If we want to step on the shadow of pseudoscience, those type of devices really aren't going to help the cause.
Okay. I just something, because obviously why I've got you here, I want to ask you all these different questions because you're a man in the know that can actually answer them for me. So we've got Afterlife Paranormal are watching. Charlie Harker. Hello, Charlie. Wes says Jersey is cloudy and dreary, but besides that, we're all good. So thanks for asking.
Great.
Dennis has got a question for you. Dennis is actually part of our team. He says, with the recent lockdowns in the UK, don't remind us, a lot of places won't be investigated. Do you think this will give the energies a rest with the over-investigating place, the ones that are being over-investigated? And then we can go and invest once again. We will get some great evidence.
That's a great theory, actually. I do believe that. Oversaturation in locations is a big problem. It really is. I mean, especially here in the States. I know you guys have, gosh, you guys so many haunted locations in the UK. It's crazy. But here in the States, too, it's over-investigated. And a lot of times, you're not getting credible evidence or data. And I mean, of course, you're going to go to a location, 98% of the time, nothing's going to happen. But these locations that have had very credible evidence collected over the years, they get investigated on a nightly basis by people with different intentions, people with different styles of investigation. And if this is what we believe it to be, it is a deceased human with consciousness, I think people would really get sick of it. I think it would be a way to detour away from speaking to somebody or actually having phenomena happen. So I think that's a good observation, is that because these locations aren't being visited, that it might be like a battery recharging. So hopefully it's on 100% by the time we all get back to it.
Well, we literally got put in lockdown again yesterday. So we won't be going anywhere for a while yet again.
Right.
And then when we were allowed out, we were only actually allowed out for a short period of time. So it was next to no time at all. So there's so many places that have not been investigated for months on end now. So it will be interested to go back to places that we've done before and see how the energy has changed, and to see what the atmosphere is like, and if it is heightened or not, or it would be interesting to find out if we do actually collect any evidence or anything when we do go back, especially those, because everywhere is different. It doesn't matter how many times you go to a location, it's never the same.
Right. A good analogy I would make is, think about a place. I'm going to use Chernobyl as an example, not because of the nuclear blast or anything like that, but you think about, there's this bustling city, right? And then the people leave, then the elements start to take back over, right? You think about the trees start to grow into buildings, the animals start to show back up. I think it would be very similar with a haunted location, where instead of having this bustling amount of energy of people coming through on a nightly basis trying to communicate with you, now that that's vacated, I think the energy within the building, or the energy that's possibly of an entity or a deceased person, if you will, starts to take back over and reclaim that space. And I think that's a good analogy, I would say.
I find it really interesting. Daniel Class has joined us. He said, hey, everyone, great show. Evening, Dan. Hope you're okay. Trace Brun, do you like to rely on your own intuition or technology? I like to use both, mainly my own intuition. Tracy, you were late joining us tonight. Oh, she's in trouble. She's one of our moderators. I was like, do I put her question up? And I thought I will put her question up, even though she was late.
I will say, though, there are times you do feel a change, right? You are in a building and you feel that something shifted. I think everyone has that inside them. I think that everyone has an empathic sense to them. It's just a matter of how they utilize it, or if they, kind of unlock it, if you will. But for instance, going back to talking about the pressure changes, there's a lot of times where you're in a location where you start to feel that heaviness on your chest, or you start to have the feeling of pressure in your ears, like you're on an airplane. And we started to notice, again, when you start to feel those sensations, that boom, there's a change in the barometric pressure in the environment, and then you don't know what's going to happen. It could be some kind of audible phenomena, electronic voice phenomena, or it could be a significant visual event. And we've noticed that, and it doesn't happen often, but once we all start to look into these environmental conditions and the environmental changes, I think that we'll start to see that pattern and start to see that correlation, that something's about to happen, and there's obviously a change in the environment. What's causing it? That's the big question.
See, I find so interesting. I go off and just listen, and forgot again then for a minute. Sorry. being very unprofessional, but it's because I'm just interested in what you've got to say. So I just I find it really interesting. How do you feel about haunted locations? This is interesting. Graham. Haunted locations charging ridiculous amounts of money to investigate. Is it as bad in the US as it is in the UK for teams being ripped off or priced out? We here, I'm not about like over there, but over here, there's certain locations which are like over £1,000 to hire. And unfortunately, for a lot of people and teams that are going out there, which don't, no disrespect to the public, by the way, we'll put that out there. But there are a lot of teams that don't want to work with the public and don't want to do public events. They only want to do private events. But because of the cost of the locations, unless you can get lots of team shares and lots of other teams involved, it is difficult for quite a few places to actually book because of the expense of them. Like I said, I don't know what it's like for you guys over there. Do you have the same sort of thing?
Oh yeah, exactly the same thing. Yeah, it's definitely happening over here. It's been happening over here since the first version of Ghost Hunters made the whole thing what is today. It created this huge phenomena that we see of people all across the country here in the States flocking to these places that have been on television. And it is a good thing in some ways, not all the time, but there are some buildings that really are in desperate need of historical restoration to keep those buildings going for future generations. But there is a lot of locations that are just oversaturated and charging a lot of money, and it can be unfortunate, absolutely, but that definitely does happen here, absolutely.
I suppose because you've got those key places that everybody wants to do because they've heard about them being done in the past. So you have got those certain places that everybody wants to do, and they're not stupid. They know that it doesn't matter what they pull it up to, people are going to pay it because it's one of those everybody wants to go and do that location. It's a bucket list location or whatever.
Right.
So they can charge a lot more money because people are going to pay it because they want to go there as a one-off. So
yeah, absolutely.
If it's a little bit different, I understand what you're saying with buildings needing restoration or it's just to keep the building going or whatever, then I can understand that more. It's when it's locations that are just charging that amount because they can.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a big difference there too. And I think that a lot of people know which locations have that difference. You know what I mean? There's definitely, probably a good 10 locations throughout our country that have this stigma associated with it, that they're the most haunted and they're the most visited. And a lot of times they get written up in different articles or magazines saying, one of the top 10 most haunted places in the world, things like that. And, again, that's always just opinion because there's really never the data or evidence to back that up in a lot of cases. So there's a handful of them that really it's about money. And that's something I've talked about before. There's even locations here in the States where people, will create their own history associated with the location, will make up abuses or talk about things that happened that really didn't, especially from a historical documentation standpoint. And there's even places that going down the metaphysical or occult route that people will try and conjure or try and trap energies in a location. And then they open that up to tourism, or what I call paratourism, and allow people to come into sometimes very, very dangerous situations that can really harm people. So you get a lot of that here too. So it's something that's happens, definitely.
It is unfortunate. Like I said, if it's for a historical point of view, then that's completely different. But it's sad, really, because, like I said, there are a lot of teams out there that just want to go and experience the place, but finance-wise, they just can't afford to do it. We all do normal jobs. We all do a normal job during the week, and you go out there on a weekend. I do it all the time. If I had the finance, I'd be out all the time, admittedly. But it's having that finance to do it in the first place, especially when you've got locations that are like ridiculous amounts of money. Haunted Castle, leading on for what he's just said, he said that he agrees. My only thing with team shares is locations being flooded with too much human activity and noise. Hard to keep track of everyone.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what you always go with that. With people that you trust and that you can leave them to their own devices to go and do their thing and and schedule everything, because we We've done many of team shares and things to pay for locations.
Right. And human contamination is a huge thing in this field, right? Where you have too many people in a location, you're not controlling the environment, you're not doing baseline sweeps to understand what the natural conditions are in a building. And then you have people just running rampant through those locations. And a lot of times people will present what they believe to be evidence that's just purely human contamination. And that's something that we have to think about, because we have to control that environment as much as possible. Obviously, we won't be able to completely control it, but you have to lock it down as much as possible. And having that human contamination running through a building, I think leads to a lot of false positives.
See, that's the difficult thing. Like I said, with some teams doing public events for certain locations because of the cost, so they can get to go and do it. But then you don't experience it because you're looking after the public and making sure they're being, might as well say, entertained, because it's basically what they're there for. It is a shame, really, because you have the public there, but then you don't have the experience because you've got all the contamination and you're trying to do an EVP and someone starts talking, or they don't talk, they whisper, which is even worse because you're trying to do an EVP and they're whispering, and you're like, is it EVP or is that someone whispering? No, it's somebody whispering because you told them not to talk, so they're not talking, now they're whispering instead, which is still capturing anyway. But yeah, I see where he's coming from with that. He's also, Tracy says, really, Brandon, that's bloody awful. I think she means about the history being made up, and that's crazy.
It does happen. It happens more than you'd think with some of these locations. I mean, there's a lot of opportunists out there, people that will buy an old rundown building that looks creepy, would look great in a horror film or maybe on a paranormal TV show, that say, hey, look, there's these abuses that happened here. But at the end of the day, you find out it's actually the complete opposite. And that's happened. It's actually something that Mustafa and I talk about in the book a little bit as well. There's another hint in the book.
We got a little bit of we're drawing the information out slowly. I'll stop doing that now. Sorry. He says a lot of teams do it because of the guaranteed views on their channels too, I suppose. For example, we've got like 30 East Drive and Ancient Ram, 2 places here. So guaranteed views minimum due to search engines on YouTube, like, 5,000 views, because they're known places.
Exactly. I mean, Ancient Ram Inn is widely known. I think here in the U.S., I think it was made famous by Ghost Adventures, right, in the first, I think, second season or something like that. And of course, it's the way it was portrayed and what they did there. It caused a big stir here in the States, and people, really see people here investigate the Ancient Ram Inn, so they go and they Google it after they watch the show, and there's all the views right there.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's easy done. That's like a couple of places he said that. And was it East Drive that was on Paranormal Lockdown as well? I think I might be wrong.
I'm not sure.
I think East Drive.
I never really saw episodes of that.
Yeah, I think that was on this. That was another place where, and in Drakelow Tunnels, which is literally 14 miles from me, that was on that show over there. So obviously people then knew about it over in the States as well as over here because of it being on an American show.
Right.
But that's not too inexpensive place. Just reading the comments, sorry. Jess is saying the price is too much on most places to hire out, which is true. All discounts. We're stuck freezing our backsides off in the British winter as we can't afford to hire anywhere indoors. It's okay though. My mum bought me the thermals for Christmas.
I know how that feels. The second season of Ghost Hunters, we were in some of the coldest places in the country, and man, it was brutal at times where it's hard to concentrate in those situations because you're so cold and you're trying to stay warm. And we were in some of the coldest places. We were investigating in Alaska, and we were in Galena, Illinois, Colorado. So we were in some places that were very, very cold. Some that were actually negative degrees. So it was cold. Wow. It gets really cold, but it's hard to battle those elements sometimes. So I understand where he's coming from with that.
Well, the things we do sometimes. But yeah, going back to the that's not something we've really talked about. We've been talking for like good 50 minutes. We've not really talked about the show at all. Normally when you have people on and asking questions and so on, they're like, they want to know everything about the TV show they're on. So it's really interesting and great for everybody to get a different side to things and to actually learn about different things from you rather than just ask you all about the show. Okay. Judy says, a lot of times when you want to pay to join a public investigation, it's not only expensive, but there seems to be no limit on the number of people joining, so it's difficult. Yeah, I don't like big numbers.
Yeah, it's the contamination issue. That's tough. It's very tough.
Yeah, I don't like big numbers. I understand some ways because trying to keep the costs down for the public and not charge a lot of money for these tickets. But then sometimes you have to charge that a bit more to have less people. It's a knock-on effect either way. Everybody either wants to pay less money and there'd be too many people, or pay the bit extra and then you can have a few less. That's what we tend to do. So we try and keep the numbers down if we can. Ernie Pack, hi Ernie from Midnight Wolf Productions. Brandon, do you like to walk through a location to feel it out before setting up equipment?
Personally, I think that the first thing that should be done at a location is obviously there should be site analysis at some point, but I think that right away you need to test the environmental conditions of a location, everything from pressure to temperature to EMF to, I mean, everything. You have to look at everything. So you can look at a very simple farmer's almanac that shows you what the environmental conditions should be in an area, from the moon phase to the pressure to the temperature, all that. So I think that you should go in, have a site analysis, not only by visually looking at it, but also doing a sweep, what I refer to as a baseline control sweep, where you figure out the environmental conditions and have that written down so you know what the conditions should be according to what even an app, like on your phone. If you have an iPhone, you can pull it up. It'll tell you what the pressure is, the temperature, the moon phase, all that. So you look at what the control is supposed to be, test that yourself within the location, so you have a baseline of what can possibly change during the investigation. And a lot of times I think when those changes in the environmental conditions take place, it can lead to something we can't explain. So I think the first initial walkthrough should not only be a site analysis visually and understanding what's safe and what's unsafe, but it should also to have those control baseline sweeps.
Leanne says, Brennan, what is your best evidence you have captured?
There's two pieces that come to mind. One would have to be a piece of visual evidence I collected on the RMS Queen Mary in Long Beach in the winter of 2008. And also the EMCCD footage that we collected on season 2 of Ghost Hunters at Fort Stanton, New Mexico, in the first federal tuberculosis hospital in the United States. So I have to say those two pieces of evidence are things that have not been explained in any way, shape, or form by my consultants, by the various engineers and medical doctors and scientists I deal with. So those two I would have to say are the best for sure.
Have you gone into a location and not used any equipment at all in different occasions?
Absolutely. I actually was lucky enough to live in one of the most haunted locations in Southern California for 3 years, a place called the Glen Tavern in San Paulo, California. So I was there on a daily basis, not using equipment. So it was interesting. And it was actually a time I worked, it's a hotel, it's an inn, a restaurant, a hotel. And I actually worked the night shifts, front desk sometimes. So there was times where I was in the building by myself, sleeping in the hotel, and wasn't using equipment, just filling it out. So yeah, I was lucky enough to have that experience for about 3 years.
Wow. So in those 3 years, did you have any real significant personal experiences, or have you had any real significant personal experiences? You must have done all the years that you've been doing it for.
Yeah.
Is there anything that sticks out?
At the Glen Tavern, for sure, I would hear like multiple times, during that 3 year period. When I was one of the only ones in the building, I would hear kids. I mean, clear as a bell. I mean, just running down the hallway. Not only do you hear the footsteps and them running down the hallway, you audibly would hear them. And there's a kid there. I was checking people in. I had the guest log and everything. And No one there. No one, not even remotely close to kids. I actually documented that too, separate occasions. But there's definitely a phenomenon at that building, and it seems to be associated with kids in some way.
Wow. And have you gone back there since you lived there to go and investigate it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, we did an event there last year with all the cast from Ghost Hunters, and it was really intimate event. Actually, funny enough, we kept it very small. We actually capped the number of people that were allowed to come to the investigation in order for us to try and have a real investigation with the public. And we had some amazing EVP that was collected that night, and it was a really great experience bringing these people I worked with on the show to a location I lived at for a number of years. So that was really cool.
So you must have such a great energy. Like I said, you work with Mustafa and you go out with him and you've done this book with him and everything. And I've noticed like Brian and Michelle, they go out and do stuff together, don't they, as well? Different events. And I suppose because you are kind of a big team, really, in some respects. And I suppose you kind of have that one significant other person probably that you do kind of click with, because they worked together before anyway, didn't they? So
Yeah.
Was there anybody on the team that you worked with prior to actually working with them on the show?
No. Actually, the first time I met all of them was in LA, and working with them on an investigation we actually did to do some test runs to go out there and see how we work together in an investigation. That was the first time I met those people. So it's really interesting. I also love working with Daryl's fantastic. He's such a great guy. He's got his YouTube show out there now, Epic Haunts. I think it's on Amazon as well. And yeah, we just click. I love Daryl, man. Him and I, came together and we got really close during the second season when Grant took the step back, and him and I really took the reins and started to handle all the cases. And him and I came very close, and he's someone I love working with. Everyone on the show is so fantastic. It was a pleasure working with all of them, but I definitely love working with Mustafa and Daryl. Definitely, we really click.
Yeah, Daryl was part of our last festival that we did. Bless him. He actually was on his way to a location to do, I think it was a public event he was doing, and he was driving there and he was running late. And we had to go live for like about 20 minutes in or something. He got to the location and parked up and was able to get to join us in part of the stream. But we really appreciate that. He still came on even though he was running late, and it was just one of those things. It was traffic and so on. But yeah, we had a really good chat with him. It's just a shame that we didn't get to spend like more time talking to him. So we have to give him a shout and get him to come on, or come on one of these, or come on the next festival or something, so we can talk to him some more. But it was quite good because he gave us a little bit of a walk around outside where he's going to be investigating. So he was actually there with Mustafa.
Great. Oh yeah, they do a lot of events together, those two.
Yeah. I just suddenly thought, who was he there? That's who he was there with back in October. So, but yeah, I've spoken to Daryl on a couple of occasions. Just want to ask these other questions of you because I don't want to take up like your entire day. What's your favourite place you investigated in season 2?
Oh man, that's tough. Oof. Probably Fort Stanton. Fort Stanton was such a unique place, not only because of it being such a large fort that it has its own zip code, which is interesting, but it's also such a culmination of different types of history. You have World War II history as a prisoner of war camp there. You have the first federal tuberculosis hospital there. You have this amazing Western history with Billy the Kid and him actually being held there and escaping from there. So it's so many layers of history and such significant data we collected there. I think that's probably the one that sticks out the most because I'm a huge history buff. I'm a huge ghost geek, and both of those topics came together in one location for me. So that was really, really fantastic.
See, I do like that about the American shows, the fact that the history side of things, that you do go into the history side of things a lot more deeply. Don't get me wrong, we haven't really got that many English shows, unfortunately, over here. I think that's why we're all like glued to the TVs, waiting for them to come out on Travel Channel or on Really Channel over here for us, or guys putting, like Darry said, putting shows on Amazon Prime and everything, because we haven't got the shows over here like you have over there. So we kind of rely on you guys for to keep giving us new seasons, so we've got something to watch. Gary says, which building or location, if you felt like it's gonna, he's missing. I know what he's trying to say. Have you been to a location you've walked into that you know is going to be active before it's even started kicking off? In Gary's words, that's how he's put it.
I think that Fort Stanton is another. I think it fits that category as well, because it's. I remember first walking into the tuberculosis hospital in the fort, and it had a different feeling to it. Like I said, you feel that pressure, and later on, we started to notice that those changes in the environment took place, and then we captured this significant evidence. I'd say Fort Stanton again, absolutely.
Amazing. There's so many places over there I want to go to, and the more people like yourself I talk to, the more places that I want to go to. Mariah says, have you had a certain belief which has changed over the years since you've been investigating?
I would say I don't think so. That's one thing that's really interesting about this new web series I'm doing with Mustafa Gadalari is we call it Formula of the Haunting. The evidence is I'm actually going back and showing case logs and archive footage I've been filming since 2006, and the cases I've been working since 2006. And it's funny to go back now in 2021 and look at these cases in 2006, because my methodology and my mindset really hasn't changed. And to me, it's refreshing. I mean, I just look significantly younger in the footage, but to see the way I conducted myself, it's nice. Obviously, I've gained more knowledge. I've learned a lot more. I think I've learned a lot more about false positives and how to use equipment properly in some situations. But, my mindset really hasn't changed, and my purpose in this field hasn't changed. But I have gained more knowledge. Obviously, I'm learning constantly every day. But I think that my protocol and methodology has really remained the same.
You never do stop learning, though, do you?
No, absolutely not.
Never. Nobody knows everything.
That's right. And if they do, don't listen to
them. Well, yeah, because you just can't. There's just too many different. You just can't. It's not possible. Also, it's amazing to be the only person in an old building. I worked in a school in Liverpool that was 100 years old. Wooden floors all around, the history echoed at times. You have to listen for it, which is true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I always say about paranormal investigation that's so exciting to me. It's the only way, in a sense, to relive history. If we're experiencing what we're really experiencing, I mean, we are literally speaking and experiencing history. And that's exciting to me. Very exciting.
Just got one more question I want to ask, and then I want you to tell everybody about your new show that you've got coming up. Just how do you define, in question, sir, how do you define demon? Is that just a ghost that wants to cause harm to the living? See, lots of people have got different opinions about this, and even if there is such a thing or if there isn't. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm interested to know what your opinion is on that.
I think that when people start to talk about demons and demonology like that's coming from a religious or a biblical context, right? So there's in my opinion, bias to it, and there's a belief system attached to it, cultural. I think that the term demon gets thrown around a lot in these television shows, because I think that they really a lot of these shows went the Hollywood horror route, right? The horror film kind of feel to it. But I think when you start to talk about demons and demonology, that's really from a biblical context and a religious context. So I think that the term has been misused drastically in the field, and drastically in the genre and entertainment side of it. I've been doing this 16 years. I've never encountered something that I would claim to be a demon or a inhuman type entity that's there to cause harm on people or possess people. Not to say it doesn't happen, but in 16 years I've been doing this, I've never encountered it. But I definitely think it's a term and terminology that is very closely related to religion and biblical terminology, and is something that has been heavily used and misinterpreted in the genre and in the field.
Yeah, I do believe you are right with that, big time. I think, like you said, it is definitely majorly hyped up with TV and films and so on. So getting onto TV, film, so on. Your new project. Can you tell everybody about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So Mustafa Gadalari and I are doing a web series, a video series that's going to be building up to the release of our book in 2021. We have 2 episodes out right now. It's called Formula of a Haunting, the Evidence. And what that means is Formula of a Haunting is a term I've been using for years because I think that there are specific terminology, protocols, methodology, ethics, and environmental conditions and data associated with what I call the formula of a haunting. And it's really going through all of these case logs since 2006, breaking down what worked for us and what led to us collecting significant data. And really us commenting on that, saying how we collected it, and really talking about how science is the way, sensationalism is not. So the series is really to show the methodology, the protocol, of what worked for us, and to show that there are false positives that may seem to be something we can't explain, but there definitely is a natural explanation.
And where can we find it?
You can find it on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Formula of a Haunting. You can also find it on YouTube at my APRA Paranormal page, American Paranormal Research Association. Just type in A.P.R.A. Paranormal, or just type in Formula of a Haunting, and you'll find it there on YouTube as well as Facebook.
Okay, cool. I want to say thank you so much for joining me tonight. There's a couple of things. Jess says, I'd like to go to Waverley. I better put this up because I'll be Haunted Scouts will be inboxing me otherwise. He says, series 1 of Haunted Scouts on YouTube. Agreed, though, about time a paranormal show got back on mainstream in the UK. Enough reality TV already. But that's what I mean. We really don't have anything. Oh, the lovely April is just... April! You're coming on now? Hi, April. I let you off because you're lovely. Jess says, thank you. I want to say thank you so much for joining me this evening. I really do appreciate it. And I could just carry on talking to you. Just let everyone know that you will be taking part, and we mentioned earlier, you will be taking part in our upcoming festival, the 15th to the 17th of January. So you will be coming back. You won't have to pull up with me for a whole hour. You'll be glad to know. But yeah, guys, just when you watch the festival, Brandon will be there. You can ask him some more of your questions. Dennis says, cheers, Brandon, top bloke. Haunted Castle, Brandon, superb, mate. Really enjoyed it. Good luck with everything. And thank you. I'm going to say brilliant chat. Thank you so much, Brandon. So everybody over here is saying thank you for joining us and giving up your time to talk to us and to even educate us on some of the things you've talked to us about. Guys, stay right there. I'm just going to play you the promo video for next weekend's events. So you can see what it's all about. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, it's scrolling along, and I'm literally talking now and half the screen is gone. We are raising funds for CALM, which is for mental health and suicide prevention. The Just Giving page is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. It will be at the end of this video as well. I will stop talking. I will play you the video. I will say thank you to Brandon, and we will see you all tomorrow evening on the GF Uncensored show, who Gary will be talking to Willow's Paranormal tomorrow night at the later time of 9 o'clock. Thank you, Brandon. I will chat to you in just a moment. Good night, everybody, and thank you very much. you.